Welcome back to the Peak Sports Psychiatry Podcast, brought to you by 43 Degrees Sports, changing the game in athlete hygiene. Every athlete knows the post-game ritual. Toss the sweaty gear in the bag and deal with it later. That's when bacteria goes to work. The 43-degree temperature-controlled hockey bag uses advanced technology to silently kill up to 96% of odor-causing bacteria. No chemicals, no sound, no smell, just safe, effective heat and airflow that works while you rest. Trusted by pros and parents across North America. Learn more at 43degreesports.com. Now, let's dive in. Welcome back to the Peak Sports Psychiatry Podcast, where we explore the intersection of performance, mental health, and sport. I'm Dr. Mark Allen, joined as always by my co-host, Dr. Tommy Horn. And today we're teeing it up with someone who's made a real impact on how athletes think, feel, and perform. Dr. Carly Hunt is a sport and health psychologist, former Division I golfer at Georgetown University and University of Maryland, and the author of Train Your Brain to Beat Chronic Pain, of which I have a copy right here. She's worked with elite golfers, D1 programs, the U.S. Naval Academy, and Johns Hopkins, helping people perform at a high level and thrive while doing it. Carly, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, so let's start kind of where it all began. When did you first fall in love with the greatest game, golf?
Yes, I do think it is the greatest game. Yeah, I started playing golf when I was about 11 years old. My family had moved from Pennsylvania down to Florida. You know, everybody plays golf in Florida, so it was pretty natural. But I just instantly fell in love with it, and my parents were great. I had the best golf parents, so supportive. You know, I played a lot with my grandfather and started playing local tournaments, and it kind of just went from there. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, Carly. So good to be with you, first of all. And a great intro, Mark. Wow. You played at, Georgetown and Maryland, which are two pretty top programs, and competed in the NCAA championships, USGA championships. Looking back on your time as an athlete and a high performing athlete, what stands out most thinking back from a mental health standpoint or mental performance standpoint? Was there any defining moments during your career that stand out?
Yes, I think I was very lucky to come across sports psychology at an early age. Actually, in high school, I remember I was stressed. I was stressed about outcomes. I was stressed about failure. I was playing on a high school golf team with Morgan Pressel, actually, who you've probably heard of, was a top LPGA Tour player. So that was intimidating. And it was great. But I think it was actually my mom that found Terry Orlick's In Pursuit of Excellence. And I read that. And I was like, wow, I can actually control my response to situations, and also the idea of letting go, what it means to let go in competition and how that's so important. And so that really kind of set the stage, I would say. And I think it really helped me sustain a love for the game, sort of through the ups and downs of it. And Georgetown was a dream. It was a really healthy environment, great coach, great team, just a very positive. And then Maryland was also a very positive environment, but it was the next level. It was sort of more competitive. And I remember at that time, I told this story to some clients today, which is that I was a graduate student. I had an extra year of eligibility, and I just kind of had this tension in my jaw pretty much all the time. And I remembered thinking, I have to get rid of this tension, otherwise I won't be able to play freely. And then I sort of came to a place where well, I can't make this go away. So what if I just sort of let it be, and, maybe I can just play with this, and I'm just going to go with that. And that was such a game changer. I mean, it really freed me up. And so I talk with players to this day about what it would be like to sort of just accept and allow and still commit to execution anyway. And I think, that was sort of a powerful moment.
Yeah. Finding the physical and the mental symptoms, that come up and might interfere or cue us into what's going on. So, and I guess growing up as a tennis player, I always heard, tennis is, like many sports, 90% mental and the other half physical. I'm not a math major, thinking of like in pressure moments, and having that already you're tuned into some of those physical symptoms. How did that affect you in competition, in pressure? Were there any moments that stand out where you kind of were clued into some of those physical or mental symptoms?
Yes, what's coming to mind for me right now is, I guess, a high pressure moment where I was playing in the conference tournament with Maryland, and it was definitely the biggest stage I had ever been on. And I was really excited, of course, but I was so anxious on the first tee, like my whole like upper body was like shaking. And then, your name is called and you have no choice but to step into the fire and like try to hit the ball. And I just remember I was like, here it goes. And I hit a great ball down the middle of the fairway. And I still reference that. And I always ask players, can you think of a time where you felt like you were sort of shaking in your boots and you still hit a good golf shot? And people always say yes. And that's so important, I think, to sort of remember that like no thought or feeling hits the golf ball. You hit the golf ball and you can sort of include that stuff. I mean, certainly do some things like breathing and imagery and whatnot to try to like maintain some control over your physiology, but also acceptance is really key, I would say. It's like if there is anxiety or a negative thought that just kind of keeps coming, to sort of just let it be there and come back to execution step by step, and that it's okay to feel those unpleasant things.
Yeah, golf, it's got this funny way of humbling you.
Yes.
Happened to me yesterday at a simulator because I was trying to play Riviera. That
Oh,
was
wow.
fun.
Nice.
No, oh man, my front nine, I was cooking. I was only like +1, which, yeah, in a simulator where you can take as many mulligans as you want. And then the back nine, I was very much humbled. Anyway, was there a particular round or tournament in your past that like do something big about resilience? And you actually, I don't want to like tease this too much, but you did
Hmm.
talk about resilience resources in your book, which I do want to get to at some point. But yeah,
Yes.
can you think about like a particular event you were like, yes, this?
I would say I think I might answer that a little bit more in general when it comes to
Sure.
my game. So like when I played college golf, I honestly wasn't really that good. Like I don't think. I mean, maybe that's just my low confidence that persists to this day. But like about how like self-trust and things. Tee to green, my stats were not that great, but I was really good around the greens and I just loved golf so much and I really wanted to succeed. So I think I just would just grind it out, just get up and down from anywhere. I remember my coach told me like years later that I could get up and down from a garbage can, which I really took as a compliment because you just kind of have to like grind it out. And I think that that's really an important piece of, being of performance is kind of remembering that it doesn't always look beautiful, especially in golf. And so this idea of sort of playing the game that you have that day is so powerful because yes, it feels great when everything's locked in, but a lot of the time it's not. Resilience meaning, I can trust my ability to get the ball in the hole even if it's not totally going according to plan. And things really hardly ever go according to plan. And I think sort of being able to embrace that kind of as part of the adventure is definitely a part of resilience in golf.
Yeah, I'll take that a step further, Mark, your question. So what does separate mentally, if there is anything, with the mental game, what separates the good golfers from the great ones in your mind?
Yes, I definitely think trust and self-belief is foundational. So I think the best players do trust that they can play great. That doesn't mean that they don't experience reductions in confidence, that feeling of confidence, but this overall self-belief, practicing and training with a purpose. So not really falling into like, I'm going to just be out here practicing to put in hours and to sort of feel like I did something versus always practicing and training sort of effectively with a purpose, with getting regular feedback, commitment to the process. So the process is where it's at, and that ability to sort of believe that you can achieve great outcomes, but then sort of setting that to the side and saying, what would it be like to just become totally immersed in the process of each shot? At least simple as it sounds, like one shot at a time. And I think also being able to, yeah, like go after big things while also being your own best coach, not falling into the trap of sort of tearing yourself down when you fall short of a goal, but kind of having the courage to believe that you can set challenging goals for yourself, but really encouraging yourself along the way and knowing that your self-worth is not tied to your game. Because when that becomes the case, which is the case for elite players, many elite players, at least at times, because this is your career. But when those things start to become tied together, I think the pressure becomes too high. So I think really caring deeply about it, but also seeing it just as one part of who you are, I would say.
Mark, we've talked about that a ton. All right. Identity of the athlete is one part of you. It's not all of you. And that perfectionism that comes up when you have that athlete that's grounded and understands their identity, and this is part of it, you can still be passionate. I don't want to call out certain golfers, but I think Scotty Scheffler comes to mind and how he
Yeah.
speaks about golf. And it's almost like you want to shake him and be like, don't you realize this is the most important thing in the world? But he has good perspective. I think that means a lot to be grounded.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
Mark, I'm jumping in. You had some.
No, no. Well, it's hard not to think about your own game if you're someone who likes to play golf. And I am no pro. I do like to play hack around weekends or whatnot. But I remember one time when I was having my best round, at least 1 through 8 holes. And I got to the ninth hole and I hit it in the bunker. It was the first bunker I'd hit all day. And it just, I knew at the time, I was like, oh my God. Like my automatic thought was, my round's ruined. Mind you, I was still like doing really well. I'm absolutely gonna just chunk it, or I'm gonna hit it, have to go out sideways. Yes, it took me 4 times to get out of that bunker, and I'm gonna get
Mhm.
reminded about that multiple times by my buddies. And it did ruin my round. But how is it like? I mean, you're a golfer yourself. You're a golf coach. You're a psychologist at the PGA Tour, LPGA. What do you tell people to sort of quiet the mind when they're in one of those situations where you know what's going on, that chatter? How do you get that chatter to stop? And maybe I am skipping ahead a little bit, but like
Yes.
I love like actionable things that you could do
Mhm.
on the course.
Yes. I Making it super actionable, I often talk about how you sort of have, like, in that moment, you have kind of 2 main options. So option 1 is to take a step back, take a deep breath, notice those thoughts, and replace them with something more positive. So the 3 C's from cognitive behavioral therapy: catch it, check it, change it, right? Roy McIlroy talked about doing this in the Players' Championship this year in interviews. He said, when I got up to 17, which is the high pressure par 3 towards the end of with the island green, right? Lots of people hit it in the water, stressful. He thought about hitting it in the water, right? And so then he stopped and then thought about hitting it on the green, right? So that's thought replacement. So something to practice. Sometimes the automatic thoughts just keep coming, they become intrusive over and over. When that happens, I recommend the thoughts come and go approach, right? I worked with a player once who, actually more than one, who couldn't stop thinking about shanking the ball. The shank in golf is like the worst shot you could possibly hit. You hit it off the hosel, which is like the shaft, and then it's just horrible, right? It's like everyone's worst nightmare. So what we worked on, and the more he tried to get rid of it, the worse it became, right? Like he tried thought replacement and then it just was worse. So that's where you say, okay, I don't like this thought, but I can allow it. I can sort of just let it float around in my consciousness and look at all the other things that are here in addition to this thought, like my routine, my target, my ability, my well-practiced skills, my playing partners, right? Kind of letting it be sort of a small thing amidst a bigger thing, and then come back to execution, right? So like accept and commit. I accept unwanted experiences and I can still commit to this. And it worked over the course of time, right? Like the thought was there, he could still hit good golf shots. And then paradoxically, through the allow and the accept, it sort of became less powerful, right? So sometimes it's like the going to war with the thought, meaning, oh, here comes this thought, I'm going to blow it. That's where you're believing your thoughts. So kind of replacement or thoughts come and go, I think, are 2 key strategies.
So it's interesting that you bring that up. I'd heard the phrase, and I don't remember what book it was from or who I was speaking to, but it was like, if you have negative self-talk on the golf course, it's as if like, would you want a caddy chirping at you, giving you negative feedback the whole time? No, fire your caddy. Like, so to
Right.
just like, no, this is dumb. So, but then you actually, if you're like someone who's actually on the professional tour or something like that, you might actually have a full, like a person who's a caddy for you. How do you work with that dynamic? If you're like really struggling in that moment and you're having those automatic thoughts that aren't going well, and you're like, I'm going to shake the ball, I'm going to shake the ball, I'm going to shake the ball. How can you use that person to help you?
A caddy, like a real caddy, you mean?
Yes, a
Right.
real caddy.
Yes. That's a great question. I think sort of setting a game plan ahead of time is always good for those moments. And a caddy is a huge part of the player's team, right? So
Right.
I think naming that, say, this is what's happening, right? And hopefully the caddy can come in with some key reminders, right? Trust and believe in yourself. These are just thoughts. Like they're not facts, right? Like, and let's kind of try to do something to sort of soothe your nervous system. Sometimes doing something with the body is really helpful too. Like if you can laugh with that person or take some breaths, sing a funny song for a few seconds and be like, okay, this is not life or death. This is golf and I can do it, right? To kind of bring down that sort of fight or flight response, which often is driving, the severity of those looping thoughts, I would say.
I'm
Okay.
thinking about that, the check it. And so, Mark, you mentioned maybe a caddy is somebody there who can help you check it and then try to change it, right? That doesn't always work. And then we get the new wave of acceptance and commitment. But I'm also thinking about technology too. And, I'm watching golf sometimes and they've got the whoop on and you can see the fight or flight, the sympathetic response. Their nervous system is kicking into gear, whether they are having the thoughts or not, or they're not
Right.
identifying those thoughts. And so this
Yeah.
physiological response too, There's the behavioral part of cognitive behavioral. What are those tips there? Are there certain skills that you go to with players to
Mhm.
activate more of a parasympathetic drive there?
Yes, definitely. For example, I like to bring in some positive psychology actually for that.
Hmm.
Meaning, in between shots, can you savor something like the beautiful weather or like chat with your playing partners or, think about a really fun memory or plan a vacation, even, it's things like this that even feel kind of silly, right? To kind of just bring that level down. Gratitude and appreciation, as cliche as it is to say, I think is kind of it's hard to feel terrified if you're like, wow, my back isn't killing me. I'm out here able to do this thing and wow, like let me try to soak this in. Tapping into social support, having a good caddy who can help you sort of feel comfortable, I think is really helpful. I mean, outside of a given round of golf, I'll bring it back to identity for a minute, that like having an identity that's much larger than your performance, I think is huge for the fight or flight issue, right? Because less is sort of riding that outcome. But certainly all the mindfulness based practices, being able to do some deep breathing practices, box breathing, all that type of stuff can be helpful in the moment.
So, but before we get into the book, which I really am excited about here, I want like one last sort of like simple mental skill that you can give to the generic golfer out there who was about to play. So, if you're like standing over a putt that has some sort of meaning in that day, what can you tell that person to sort of quiet the mind?
Right. So I think every golfer should practice what I'm going to describe as should practice a pre-shot routine in the following way. So
Okay.
hopefully you have practiced this before the big putt has come to you. But in any
I've read a
case,
few golf books and
it's still gonna relate. It's still gonna relate, but there's basically and Annika Sorenstam's coaches really popularized and really came up with this method, which is the think box, the decision line, and the play box. So it's really easy for golfers to overthink, right? Like interrupt your well-learned motor skills with like analysis. So you think in the think box. So you're over this putt, visualize your line and see where it's going to go in the hole. If it's like a downhill slider, you see it kind of dropping in the front edge, right? So you've thought that through and you step over this imaginary decision line. You make your decision and then it's done. You're not going to be over the ball, like debating between like two different lines in the hole, right? So think box, decision line, play box, you're over the ball. And then it's so simple. Like trust your eyes and your hands. Keep an external focus out at the target, right? Like not all the mechanics of your body out there. And then just remember, I can do the simple task of rolling a ball to a hole. It's so simple, right? So
oh, love that.
yeah,
Oh, that is awesome. Okay. Yes, I can
We
I can
do
do
that
the
in
simple
you can
baseball
do
task of
too.
that. You can do it.
I can roll a ball with a
Yes.
club. I can do that. Okay, great.
Mark, I was thinking of Dr. McDuff just now in his chapter on internal versus external focus. And I like
Yes.
how you just described at the moment in time when you switch from internal to external or where that
Mhm.
blend is. I really like how you
Yes.
put that. And I think it goes along with the self-talk too, because that at that moment is when those automatic thoughts, whatever is happening that's negative needs to change. For me, when I'm,
Mhm.
about to maybe double fault or that's a thought in my mind,
Mhm.
I go to an image and then execute. I won't
Nice.
give away my secret of what that is. That'll be another episode. But yeah,
Perfect.
Mark, I got you thinking about
Yeah.
it now.
Yeah.
Can we go to chronic
Yeah.
pain? Because
Let's do
I
it.
think when we talk about and I see patients with chronic pain all the time, we see yeah, there we go. Chronic pain, gosh, doesn't just cause performance issues, but we see big issues with depression and anxiety, et cetera.
Yeah.
And there's some
Yeah.
great therapies out there, great modalities, and so I'm really
Mhm.
interested in learning more, but, how did you get into this idea of talking about chronic pain and the psychological treatment or response for it?
Yes. So I don't know if either of you have ever felt this way, but I sort of feel like my work in the pain world almost feels like the universe kind of led me to it in a way. Like I didn't really think that years before, but I have personally grappled with some health problems since childhood and golf really kept me healthy. And like I didn't even think I even realized it throughout my career, but sports give us so much in terms of staying engaged in our lives and social connections and all this type of stuff. But in any case, when I finished off my collegiate golf career, I was so fascinated by elite performance and what drives elite performance. And I had an opportunity to go to a neuroscience lab to sort of look at the brain dynamics underlying best performance. And like, that was great, but I decided I wanted to kind of be in a more applied psychologist role. So became a psychologist, did applied sports psych work. And then I was finishing up my doctorate, and there was just an opportunity that opened at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, where my family was, to study pain. And so I took it. And it was fascinating because, the focus of the lab I was in was about, chronic pain treatments that tap into positive psychology and, these different things that I had been studying. Yeah, but the reality is pain is, just like any health issue, it's, we now have this biopsychosocial understanding of pain, meaning that it's not just biological. So, the biomedical view being if you have pain or a health problem, the body's kind of like a car, right? And like you need an auto mechanic to come in and like replace the broken part, right? And then it will then work. But chronic pain is so much more complex, and the body is a complex system, and psychological and social factors, environmental factors impact the pain experience. And I just think it's so empowering, hopefully empowering for folks to learn about the neuroscience of pain and how psychosocial factors matter, and that maybe we have more control over the pain experience than was once thought decades ago.
Yeah. I mean, I blitzkrieg read your book
No.
over the past few days, which was stupendous. Like I'm like
No.
not joking.
Thank
Then
you.
you start with like talking about your personal story, then you kind of go into describing, as you said, sort of like the biomedical model versus the biopsychosocial model, which absolutely we agree with, and that's our entire training. Like, of course,
Yeah.
there's social and cultural factors would affect anything. It's like bidirectional.
Yeah.
But the area that you talked about in the book that was just so fascinating to me, I was like, I hadn't really thought of it, was the neuroplasticity element. That
Mm.
once that pain occurs, it can get louder and louder and louder, and then it gets good at being louder and louder and louder, and then it's hard to quiet.
Yes.
And then, so you then have to introduce positive elements to sort of reverse that, and you have to continue introducing these positive elements to sort of, it's like an equation
Yeah.
almost. And then that neuroplasticity angle then leads to then not cure, but like a way to manage the chronic pain.
Yes.
I thought that was freaking awesome.
Yes.
Can you tell me? Well, one, I mean, writing a book is obviously there's a personal element to it. Walk us through sort of how you got to this point, what you want the readers to really take from this. Yeah, what would you say inspired it?
Yes. So when I was kind of taking a deep dive into pain research at Johns Hopkins, I was really focusing on mindfulness-based approaches, pain neuroscience. So really understanding what's happening in the brain with chronic pain and how we can impact the brain through the conscious mind, through mental training practices like, for example, meditation. Or there's a practice I talk about in the book, which is part of a relatively new treatment called pain reprocessing therapy, which is all about helping people recognize that their pain, provided you've been checked out medically and everything else, could be what I talk about in the book as a faulty alarm system. So the pain, pain exists to protect us from harm, right? So it's great
Yeah.
that we have pain. But just as you said, with neuroplasticity, the brain gets really good at making pain, and it gets better and better. It becomes automatic. It's like learning a sport, learning golf. Like when you first hit putts, you had to think really hard about everything, and now it's probably more automatic. So same thing with pain. But even though the brain and body learn pain, it can be unlearned. So coming back to mental training practices, lifestyle changes, behaviors, mindsets that can help lower pain, there's really a lot out there that's only slowly being translated to the public. And that's where this book comes in, and the contribution I hope to make. For example, and I guess I was talking about pain reprocessing therapy. So kind of coming back to that, as an example, it's possible to relearn how one interprets pain sensations. From I feel pain, it must mean there's harm. Hurt does mean harm in an acute injury context, right? Like you hurt yourself playing whatever the sport is you're playing, you should rest, get medical attention, all that type of stuff. But when pain becomes chronic, hurt does not necessarily mean harm anymore. So to be able to say like, oh, I feel pain. Let me be curious about this. Let me be open, accepting. Let me learn not to go to war with these sensations, so to speak. Like, oh, like I don't like this feeling. What does it mean? My body's breaking down, all that type of stuff versus here come pain sensations. That's my brain misfiring. Like maybe I can just take a lighthearted relationship with this sensation and kind of over time practice safety reappraisal is the technique that I'm describing. People can look that
Ah.
up online and find recordings online to practice. But you basically over and over kind of practice sort of seeing this from the lens of safety. And the whole point is to sort of help your brain and nervous system come back into a place of more safety. And there are lots of different threats, so to speak, that can ramp up a pain alarm. So your brain is always trying to determine, like I was saying, how threatened or safe you are. And when the alarm system is kicked up, it might be sort of responding to your social circumstances. Are you in unhealthy relationships, for example, or your psychology? Are you kind of stuck in a state of catastrophizing about pain and worrying, right? All these things really matter. And the book really kind of lays out a comprehensive toolkit, I hope, for folks to kind of take a personalized approach to their pain and say, like, what in this might apply to me and how can I sort of work to lower my pain volume?
Yeah, I love how you're simplifying something that's so complex, but I think it goes back to our conversation on the biopsychosocial model that we all agree with, and the intersection of trauma, whether it's physical trauma or psychological trauma and pain, I
Hmm.
think is so interesting. I think you were hitting on that.
Yeah.
To tie it back, I wonder, we've used CBT for pain for a long time. But
Hmm.
I've been seeing, okay, what about emotional awareness and expression therapy and things like that? Is that
Yeah.
in line with what you're talking about here?
Yes, I think so. Only kind of I have like a broad understanding, I would say, of emotional awareness and expression therapy, but it is in line with this kind of treating pain from a modern neuroscientific sort of perspective. And you mentioned emotion. Like when pain becomes chronic, it's much more closely tied with emotion, right? So we know that anger, fear, that can have cause someone to have like a higher pain day, right? If they have chronic pain. And so working with emotions, emotional awareness, emotion regulation, that sort of stuff can be helpful.
Is it
And it
better
is
done
yeah.
in groups or individual? Because I always wonder this, patients with chronic pain, sometimes they do better in a group where they can kind of name the emotions together and normalize it. Is there
Well,
something
it's
to
also it
that?
can be isolating,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
to know that other people are going through this too, I mean, you talk a lot about in your book about like anhedonia and like that just lack of just you can't get off the couch, you don't have interested in doing anything that you typically would enjoy, and
Yeah.
also shifting from a narrow focus to a broader focus, so that you're in layman's terms, it's like distracting yourself with positive things that you could actually help get yourself out of your head and into doing something. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yes. Yeah, I think group therapy is awesome. I think it's one of my actual, aspirations for 2026 is to start offering pain groups and doing this
Please
brain
do.
retraining stuff, but also, yeah, like let's do this together because it is so isolating. And, I've lived it. Like it sort of feels like it's almost like when you're grieving a death, you sort of feel like you're on a different wavelength than some other people. And that's so hard. And it's so therapeutic to come together and to feel seen and heard and to have a shared experience. Like that in itself we know is, a placebo factor, right? Which is a real experience, right? Like a non-specific, factor that helps us feel safer, right? That helps you feel safer. And so therefore, that could help turn down that pain volume.
Yeah.
And there's an attribution of that pain, right? So it's either positive or negative attribute. Okay, go ahead, Tommy. Sorry.
No, no, I love that, Mark, and I love how you said it's so isolating because, Carly, you're working to bring it back to the athletic mindset. You're working with
Hmm.
golfers. It's an individual sport, but even for them, just to
Hmm.
be off the course, dealing with an injury and pain is more
Hmm.
difficult because of that isolation. We see in team-based sports, and I don't know if you've worked with athletes from other sports.
Hmm.
My bias is to get them back into the clubhouse or the training
Hmm.
room instead of isolating their care. Would you agree with that, or have you seen that in
Hmm.
practice?
I would absolutely agree with that. I think staying connected. Yes, I've worked with non-golfers over the years, and I agree that, yeah, staying connected, that sense of belonging provides such a sense of safety. There's all this, we're all aware of the research now that belonging and relationships is like the biggest predictor of longevity and health. Like we are social people and that's so powerful. So for an athlete, yeah, getting back into the clubhouse, getting back into the team room or what have you is huge, and encouraging teammates to check in on the person with pain, even if it's just something brief, that really can really mean a lot. So yeah.
There's also a diffusion of responsibility on teams too. When things go bad, it's not necessarily one person's owning it necessarily. Like it kind of goes around, whereas versus an individual sport, the person can internalize that guilt, if you
Yeah.
will, and then can feel worse, which is why we
Yes.
typically see higher rates of depression in individual sports. But now that
Hmm.
we're back in the sports world, we can kind of pivot back to golf.
Yeah.
But I do really want everyone in the audience to know that this book, Train Your Brain to Beat Chronic Pain, is so approachable, easy to read, and I think can be an incredible thing to quote, harness the power of the mind-body connection. So I do want to go back to golf here. So you've coached golfers from juniors to tour pros. Have you noticed any like generational shifts, like maybe in how younger players approach the mental game versus folks who are a little bit older?
Yes. I think social media has created, not to sound dramatic, but I think it has created somewhat of a crisis for young people. I think they have a really hard time. When I was the last generation to grow up without phones, so smartphones, so like if I failed in a golf tournament in junior golf, like, yeah, it didn't feel great, but it was like relatively private. I thought like the paper scoreboard was like a big deal. So I think that young people really struggle with the social media. Everything's on social media. And I think that has really changed. And that's not their fault. But I think as providers, it's something for us to keep brainstorming around, sort of creating community level change, because it's so hard to get off of it if no one else is off of it, or come up with some kind of community-based way or cultural change around that, because I do think that's very challenging. It does promote a results-oriented focus, a self-consciousness, comparison. Golfers now, they all have the leaderboard on their phone in their golf bag. Like I had a regular scorecard. And so I talk with people about, okay, like, are you checking the leaderboard to make a strategic decision on the 17th hole, or is it a compulsive way of trying to feel confident, right? That doesn't work. Right. And so that sort of stuff has changed. I also think as a provider, like I find myself really wanting to, so much has changed about college sports and like the implications of that for high school athletes seeking spots at college teams. I have found myself honestly developing a bias towards smaller schools where you can play and like you can have a good academic experience and fit. Maybe that's not really a bias. I mean, that's all good things to consider, but I think there is an over focus on the ranking, the result, versus kind of thinking, where could I go and have a good holistic experience that will serve me in my life, whether or not I make it professionally, I would say.
Okay. So in your book, which I need to get a copy, Mark's read through it. I need to get it. But I've heard that you said performance and well-being aren't opposites. They're teammates. So I love that, kind of brings it together of what we try to message as well. What does that
Yeah.
mean? Do you unpack that just a little bit for us?
Yeah. I think definitely well-being and performance go hand in hand. I've worked with golfers that have more severe depression or mental health concerns, and that really needs to be addressed in order to A, just have a good quality of life, but B, reach the performance goals. So I think the work you guys are doing is just so vital for athletes to be able to get the mental health support that they need. And yeah, I think a lot of the practices that I talk about in my book and that are part of sports psychology can help with both well-being and performance. And I think seeing those things go hand in hand is really healthy for everyone. And I think as coaches and parents and like other folks within the sport environment start to see that too, the evidence behind that, I think it can only help athletes, versus maybe a more antiquated view of, mental toughness and sort of like ignoring your body and sort of pushing through when it might be better to pull back. And kind of have that balance. I mean, I'm sure you both have a lot that you could maybe speak to around that topic, but it's just, really important.
So you touched earlier on results orientation as a result of like constantly having social media in front of you and like being very self-aware of like, oh, how I perform versus process orientation.
Yeah.
How can you help high performers sort of redefine what success looks like, just kind of going forward?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I love to talk with people. I guess sort of firstly, I'll first start with like any given round of golf, right? Like, Mark, you probably have a number that you would like to shoot in a round of golf.
Yes.
Yeah.
It better be sub 8.
Okay, right. So like break 80 is like looming, right? And so
I've done it, just not enough. Anyway.
That's awesome. That's great. That puts you in, a really high category for golf among amateurs. But like,
That was on a simulator with mulligans.
All right. See, like,
no, that was on a real course, Tommy. On a simulator.
I never knew until this call that simulators, you could get unlimited mulligans. I didn't know that was like part of the deal. But that's great.
Yeah, you have to go to the right simulator place. But yeah, anyway.
You know where that is. That's great. But yeah, but look, I mean, so the next time you play your simulator round or your regular round, set a process goal, right? Or 2 process goals. If I keep a consistent think box, decision line, play box routine before every shot, including like a good image of what I want to have happen, I can be proud of myself at the end of that round because I committed to my process goals, which were within my control, right? So with people from more like beginners to the highest level, that's so important is the process focus and really, really, really embracing that as success, right? Like, of course, if you don't get the number you want, like you go through and sort of brainstorm like your training plan moving forward, like, of course, but like, did I commit to my process? Did I speak to myself in an effective, encouraging way all day? Like, did I maintain poised body language throughout the day? Whatever is important to you as a player, I think that seeing that as success, I think is really is huge, right? And then I also think that like I know it's kind of debated, like if it's goal setting, like how like outcome goal setting, like how useful is that? Some saying just burn your goals, and other people are like you must set goals, outcome goals. And so I don't know. The way have found myself falling on that recently is that yes, outcome goals are useful to the extent that they motivate and excite you and sort of inform you as to how you want to spend your time. If you do want to play college golf, yes, you should probably be out there for a lot of hours, versus not. But also just the idea of like, how can I get better today? And like, how can I be better relative to how I was before? Kind of take that comparison sort of away and being able to affirm yourself as you kind of move forward and develop your skills and celebrating that, right? And viewing that as part of
Yeah.
building confidence, I think is also important.
And I think to stay consistent, I love your idea of having metrics for success, goals, measurements, body composure, things that you mentioned that you can look at whether you had a good or bad day, which you judge on your score. That doesn't mean you're going to get too high or too low because there's always something that you can get better on from a technique or other metric standpoint.
Yes.
And so I guess my follow-up to that, because you've given us so many good tools. In fact, I want to go out on the golf course right now, but
Damn right.
I know it's getting dark here. 10 minutes. I hate it. But
Yeah.
when you think about the golfers that you work with, who is it the old guy like, Mark Allen that's wise enough to take this advice and put
No
it in
doubles.
practice? Right. Or is it, we're not going to edit that out, Mark, or is it the young kid who's just starting because their mind is just, talk about neuroplasticity in a 7-year-old,
Yeah.
or is it the college golfer who kind of has that mix of maturity, but they're not quite, the frontal lobe's not quite there all the way developed. So who do you like working with and who can utilize these skills?
Okay. Yes.
Mark Allen.
I guess I work most commonly with people aged, 12, 13 and older. I don't consider myself to have the expertise for the youngest kids, but that's something I want to be able to do because I think I probably could do it, but I want to sort of seek some additional training because I think the earlier you can learn this stuff, the better. Even just encouraging self-talk, right? And good body language and imagery. Like I think very young people can learn these skills and that can really help. And just remembering like you're out here to have fun and you're out here to stay healthy. And that is the whole point of sports, right? We've sort of lost the plot on that in a lot of ways around 7-year-olds are like need to get a college scholarship like ASAP. And that's just kind of obviously that's not like too healthy. But yeah, I love to work with juniors, college players and beyond. But yeah, I mean, even at the highest level, I hear people say, my goal is to say, how good can I get, right? Which is so exciting and it's simple. And it's almost like a 7-year-old on the putting green, just trying to make putts and pretending they're out at the Masters. And some really good players will say, I play my best golf when I'm just when I feel like a kid that's just kind of having fun. And so I think it's just really important to put that piece front and center.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I had the opportunity not too long ago to be at St. Andrews, and I have
Oh,
I have a
nice.
3-year-old who was out on oh gosh, I can't name the course right now, but it was one of those like putt courses. But to see
Mhm.
the joy in his face, and also just he's truly rolling the ball purposefully at the hole and nearly making it as a 3-year-old. I'm like, oh my god, okay, I
Yeah.
need him to work with Carly at this age. So I'm going to give a
It's
plug
awesome.
right now to one of
Yeah.
our sponsors, Max U, with the Mental Skills online platform for youth sports. They do a
Nice.
great job with this. Okay, so
Beautiful.
back to the discussion. If you could go back and give college golfer Carly one piece of mental advice before a big tournament, what would it be?
I think it would be to really let go of the perfectionism, just kind of be in the
Okay.
moment, enjoy it, and, be my own best coach, right? Like I definitely, when things didn't go well, like many athletes, I would definitely fall into the, self-critical frame, but, mental toughness, involves being your own best coach and just having that, that type of relationship with yourself and remembering that perfectionism is just an idea. It's not reality.
Yes, Tommy, we don't have a lightning round for the script, and that's okay. But we can create our own, Tommy. So
Lightning round.
let's ask some golf, like some real quick golf questions that are fun. So we'll go with this one. Okay, Carly, what is your favorite golf course that you've ever played?
Marion East in Pennsylvania.
Ooh, I'm jealous,
Yeah.
and
I'm from
now
there.
definitely.
I'm from there. So,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, fair enough. But
I mean,
so
I
okay,
didn't grow up playing there. I played there one time because I was from the area. I should clarify.
fair enough. That's like what Arnie Palmer area, kind of. Is that what we're
Yes,
talking about?
definitely.
Okay,
Either that or
nice.
if I could, and my second place is Bandon Dunes. Have you been to Bandon?
So I am very happy that the Dunes group is creating at least 5 courses here in Denver, just north of town,
Oh, they
which
are.
it's going to be
Yeah.
like the coolest new resort,
That's
but it
awesome.
is definitely not Oregon.
Yeah, but
Cannot
still,
wait to
it's
get
going
up
to be
there.
great. Yeah.
Tommy.
Mark, let's go to Oregon. I think we need to have a series of podcast recordings.
Oh, no, we're going to take Curly out there. We're just going to tape on the course.
Okay, you're
That
just
sounds
looking
great.
for free lessons
Okay.
there.
Nice.
Okay.
Totally down.
Best tournament that you've been to, professionally or amateur, and just coolest venue to watch golf.
To watch golf. Gosh, that's a tough question. I've been to Caves
Mark's wearing the
Valley, which is.
Masters shirt.
Have you been to the Masters? You've been to the Masters.
No, I've actually not. I just got some swag.
Oh, that's good. I don't even have any swag. I'm trying to remember. I feel like when I was I think I watched the U.S. Open, maybe at Bethpage Black when I was like in junior golf, and I think I saw like
Okay.
the top of Tiger Woods like club above like all the heads of people. That was like the closest I ever came to seeing Tiger Woods. That sticks out for some reason. But
Nice.
I always find watching tournaments in person as a spectator is kind of like a lot of work. It's fun, but it's also like if you're at like a really big event, you can hardly see anything. Like sit at home and watch the tracer.
It's exhausting. I was at
Yeah.
Bellerive to watch Tiger in, gosh, when did we host the PGA? Was that
2018?
2018?
Yeah.
I think it was 2018. And it came down to
Go
that
St.
finish.
Louis.
Oh yeah, it was incredible. I can walk almost to that course from here. So we're very blessed to have it, but to watch that finish, and I think Koepka, pulled it out there, but that was awesome. And I am going to the
Nice.
Masters in April.
Okay, so
That's going to be
last
amazing.
lightning round question. What
Yeah.
clubs do you play with? Driver, irons, wedges, putter?
What clubs do I play with? I'm honestly
I
looking
love
over
that you
my
just
clubs
looked
right
over
now.
your shoulder. That's
I'm looking
amazing.
at my golf clubs are like right over there.
That is
I have
hysterical.
Mizuno irons, a Callaway
Okay.
driver. I have a Scotty Cameron putter that's 20 plus years old,
Of
but I
course,
just
why
took
would
a
you ever
lesson
get
the
rid
other
of it?
day and was told that it's still good. Titleist golf ball. Yeah, I have the Ping Hoofer bag. That's great for walkers. The classic, Ping makes the best product in that department, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love that.
And then
Okay.
final, if anybody wants to pick up the book, I know Mark, you've been plugging it, but what's the best place to learn more about you, Carly, or find your book?
Yes, my book is available. The publisher is the Guilford Press, so you can get it directly from them, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, other sellers. So I would say do a Google search, train your brain to beat chronic pain. It kind of rhymes, which is always helpful to remember. My golf coaching website is called Think Better Golf, so you can look that up. I have an Instagram where I post about golf psychology specifically, and then my general practice is called Present Mind Consulting. So I'm on the web. I'm on LinkedIn, so anybody listening to this, please feel to just reach out to connect. I love to meet new people and just kind of chat about any of this stuff. So yeah.
So Carly, Dr. Hunt, this has been such a fun and insightful conversation. I always love talking golf, but this was very special. And this was kind of a reminder to me that golf is the ultimate mental sport.
Yeah.
Tommy, do you want to lead us out?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, Carly, and thanks for all you do. And thanks to all the listeners here on the Peak Sports Psychiatry Podcast. Until next time, stay steady over that 6-footer.